Imagine returning to Hogwarts each year, knowing your defense against the dark arts professor might be more dangerous than whatever lurks in the Forbidden Forest. Harry Potter lived this reality. The post was said to be cursed by Voldemort, and in Harry's time at school, a new teacher took the job every year, each with their own quirks, secrets, and sins. Some became mentors who armed Harry with the skills and courage to survive. Others nearly got him killed. Today we're ranking every defense against the dark arts teacher Harry had at Hogwarts, from the very worst who actively harmed his education, to the very best who truly helped shape the wizard he became. Our ranking criteria is simple. The professor Harry learned from the most is number 1, while the one who most hindered or endangered his learning sits at the bottom. Harry's journey through these 6 professors is a story of bravery, betrayal, and growth. Let's begin at the bottom of the list, with the teacher who taught Harry nothing good at all, and end on the one who taught him the most. Grab your wands, and watch out for unforgivable curses as we dive in. At the very bottom of the barrel stands Dolores Umbridge. Professor Umbridge, if one dares call her a professor, was appointed in Harry's 5th year, and she is by far the worst defense against the dark arts teacher Hogwarts ever saw. Don't be fooled by the pink cardigans, girlish giggle, and kitten plates. Beneath that sugary facade was a heart full of cruelty and ambition. Unlike other professors, Umbridge did not even pretend to teach practical defense. She vacuumed up any useful learning, forcing students to read theories from a textbook and forbidding them to actually practice defensive spells. Why? Because the Ministry of Magic, whom Umbridge served, stubbornly denied Lord Voldemort's return. Under the guise of a sweet simper, she spread a regime of fear, educational decree after decree to control the school, and medieval punishments to break student spirit. In Umbridge's class, Harry's wand stayed holstered. Any attempt to raise concerns about real dangers was met with that fake smile and a poisonous retort. When Harry dared to speak truth to her, that Voldemort was back, she sentenced him to horrific detentions, forcing him to carve, I must not tell lies, into the back of his own hand with a black quill. Umbridge literally scarred Harry for life, both physically and psychologically. Under her tenure, defense against the dark arts became a cruel joke. There was no defense taught at all, except defense against the darkening world was exactly what Harry and his friends desperately needed. Yet, Umbridge's tyranny had an unintended effect. It sparked rebellion. Stripped of proper instruction, Harry took matters into his own hands and secretly founded Dumbledore's Army, a student group to learn defensive magic on their own terms. In a way, this awful professor forced Harry to become a teacher himself, solidifying his leadership and honing his skills. Still, that credit goes to Harry's resilience, not to any merit of Dolores Umbridge. She did everything in her power to stifle Harry's growth and confidence. She even attempted to use the Cruciatus curse on Harry when pushed to extremes. Yes, the illegal torture curse on a student, proving she was as vile as any Death Eater. By the end of Year 5, Umbridge's reign of terror collapsed, to the delight of everyone, including the cheering centaurs who carried her off into the Forbidden Forest. But the trauma she left lingered. Harry walked away with permanent scars and a distrust of authority. It's no surprise that Umbridge takes last place on this list. In the subject of defense against the dark arts, she taught Harry nothing about fighting evil. Instead, she became an embodiment of the very darkness he had to resist. Just above Umbridge, coming in at second to last, is the one and only Gilderoy Lockhart. In Harry's 2nd year, Professor Lockhart swept into Hogwarts in a blaze of self-glory. With his gleaming smile, luridly colorful robes, and a stack of best-selling autobiographies, Lockhart seemed at first like a celebrity hero come to enlighten the class. It didn't take long for the glitter to fade. Lockhart was a fraud, a pharaoh, who had built his fame on lies and other wizards' accomplishments. As a teacher, he was utterly incompetent. In fact, the class learned more about Gilderoy Lockhart himself than about defending against dark creatures. He kicked off his very first lesson not with spells or creatures, but with a 54-question quiz, all about his favorite color, ideal birthday gifts, and self-aggrandizing trivia. Yes, you read that right. 54 questions about his own life and ego. Harry and his classmates were bewildered. Hermione alone knew the answers, having practically memorized his books, but none of it taught them a single jinx or counter-curse. When Lockhart did try something practical, it turned into slapstick disaster. Who could forget the Cornish pixies incident? Lockhart unleashed a cage of pixies in class to give the students some hands-on experience, but he had no idea how to round them up. The blue mischief makers wrecked the classroom, gleefully hoisting Neville Longbottom by the ears and shattering glass. Lockhart's response? He ducked under his desk and left Harry, Ron, and Hermione to clean up his mess. So much for the great defender. For the rest of the term, Lockhart mostly had them reading aloud from his phony books and reenacting his supposed exploits, with Harry roped in as an unwilling prop for dramatic demonstrations. By year's end, the second-year students had hardly learned any real defensive magic at all. If incompetence were his only sin, Lockhart might just be a joke. But his vanity was downright dangerous. During a Quidditch match, Harry broke his arm, thanks to a rogue bludger, and Lockhart leapt in to help, with disastrous results. He cast a poorly chosen spell that vanished all the bones in Harry's arm. Instead of a simple fix, Harry's arm turned to jelly, and he had to endure a night of agony, regrowing bones in the hospital wing. Lockhart's blunders literally hurt. And when the real crisis came, the Chamber of Secrets opening, students being petrified, and Ginny Weasley's life on the line, Lockhart revealed his true cowardice. He tried to run away from Hogwarts, then attempted to erase the memories of Harry and Ron to cover up his lies. That backfired spectacularly. His memory charm hit himself, thanks to Ron's broken wand, leaving him a bumbling amnesiac who couldn't remember his own name. In a sense, fate gave Lockhart exactly what he deserved. For Harry, Professor Lockhart was a farce and a frustration. Harry learned nothing useful about defense against the dark arts from him, except perhaps an unintended life lesson about skepticism. After Lockhart, Harry knew that not all that glitters is gold, and celebrated heroes can be frauds. While Lockhart didn't inflict the deliberate cruelty Umbridge did, he wasted Harry's time and endangered students through sheer ineptitude. That earns him a solid spot as the second-worst defense teacher on our list. Next up, in fourth place, we have Professor Quirrell, Harry's very first defense against the dark arts teacher in Philosopher's Stone. Professor Quirrell seemed a world apart from the likes of Lockhart and Umbridge. He was a nervous, stuttering young man who wore a ridiculous turban and jumped at his own shadow. In class, Quirrell's lessons were forgettable at best. He had a classroom that smelled strongly of garlic, supposedly to ward off a vampire he feared, and he could barely get through a lecture on dark creatures without breaking into a stammer. The students whispered that poor Professor Quirrell was scared of everything, hardly ideal for teaching a class about fighting the dark arts. Harry and his friends didn't learn much from Quirrell academically. No notable jinxes, no life-saving countercurses came from his tutelage. In fact, most of the first year's defense against the dark arts curriculum seemed to be reading from textbooks, while Quirrell quaked at the front of the room. He was meek and mild, and frankly, a bit of a joke. But oh, how deceiving appearances can be. Beneath Quirrell's trembling facade lurked a terrible secret. This timid professor was harboring Lord Voldemort himself. The Dark Lord's wicked soul was quite literally attached to the back of Quirrell's head, under that turban. Quirrell had met Voldemort on his travels, and been enslaved to his will. Suddenly, all those odd behaviors took on a sinister light. The man so seemingly afraid was actually plotting in the shadows. Quirrell allowed a troll to enter the castle on Halloween as a diversion, while he went after the Philosopher's Stone. He even tried to kill Harry during a Quidditch match, jinxing Harry's broom in mid-air. Snape, ironically, saved Harry with a countercurse while Hermione knocked Quirrell over in the confusion. Through the year, no one suspected the danger literally on the back of Quirrell's head. In the final confrontation deep beneath the school, Quirrell dropped all pretenses. He attacked Harry, desperate to seize the Philosopher's Stone for Voldemort. Face to face with this seemingly weak teacher turned deadly enemy, 11-year-old Harry was nearly strangled to death. Quirrell's skin burned at Harry's touch, a protection from Harry's mother's love, and he perished as a wraith like Voldemort fled. It was a harrowing ordeal for a first-year student, to say the least. Harry had discovered that evil can hide behind a friendly, ineffectual mask, and that not even a Hogwarts professor could automatically be trusted. As a teacher, Quirrell imparted almost no useful defensive magic. Instead, his tenure taught Harry a different lesson. Sometimes the enemy is right there beside you, whispering in your ear with a stutter and a smile. We rank Quirrell higher than the likes of Lockhart and Umbridge, only because he at least possessed real knowledge, however twisted his use of it, and didn't actively prevent students from learning. He was too busy fighting his own inner battle with Voldemort. But make no mistake, Quirrell betrayed the sanctity of Hogwarts and put Harry in mortal peril. That lands him firmly as one of the worst, even if his outward incompetence was merely an act. Now we move into the top half of the list, beginning with a complex figure, Professor Severus Snape, in third place. In Harry's 6th year, Half-Blood Prince, after years of longing for the defense against the dark arts position, Severus Snape finally became the DADA professor. By this time, Harry knew Snape all too well from potions class. His greasy black hair, cold sneer, and withering sarcasm were fixtures of Harry's life. To Harry, Snape was an antagonist, a man he deeply mistrusted and disliked. So when Snape took over defense against the dark arts, Harry expected the worst. And in some ways, he wasn't wrong. Snape was a harsh, mercurial teacher who made the atmosphere in class icy and tense. He had no patience for mistakes or for Harry's habitual backtalk. On day 1, Snape gave a speech about the dark arts that sent chills down everyone's spine, calling them unfixed, mutating, indestructible forces of evil. Calm down, Snape, one might think, but there was no denying the man's passion and expertise. After all, Snape had been dabbling in the dark arts since his own school days. He knew this subject inside and out, arguably better than any teacher Harry ever had. In terms of sheer knowledge and skill, Snape was very qualified for the job. Under Snape's regime, the defense class finally hit an advanced level worthy of new WT students. He immediately taught the class to cast spells non-verbally, a difficult but crucial skill for any duelist. For 20 minutes he pressed them to produce magic without saying a word, an exercise in focus and will. Only Hermione managed it in the first lesson, while Harry struggled mightily. With Snape, there were no cheerful boggart games or hands-on creature demos. It was a far more serious, intense curriculum. He forced his students to confront the dark arts in a very theoretical, yet realistic way, emphasizing constant vigilance and cleverness. In fact, ironically, Hermione later pointed out that Snape's view of fighting dark forces, relying on your brains and your guts rather than just memorize spells, sounded a lot like Harry's own approach to battling Voldemort. But at the time, Harry couldn't see any wisdom in Snape's words. All he saw was a teacher who took delight in humiliating him. Their clashes were legendary. In one memorable lesson, Snape sneered at Ron's poor attempt at a jinx and decided to demonstrate on Harry instead. Startled, Harry instinctively defended himself with a shouted, "Protego!" a shield charm so strong it knocked Snape off his feet. The class fell silent. Recovering, Snape icily reminded Harry that they were practicing non-verbal spells. Harry snapped back. "There's no need to call me Sir Professor." When Snape demanded he address him properly, a collective gasp. Ron had to hide a grin. Snape, livid, assigned Harry detention. This little exchange captured their dynamic. Snape provoking, Harry bristling with teenage defiance. Snape's bias against him, rooted in an old grudge and complicated secrets, meant Harry often left class more angry than enlightened. And yet, despite all the bitterness, Harry did learn under Snape's tutelage. Perhaps more than he realized at the time, he learned the value of non-verbal magic, even if he succeeded by accident using Snape's old textbook notes. And he gained a deeper conceptual understanding of dark curses and how they operate. Snape did not coddle them with easy exercises. He treated them like real, aspiring defenders, or even dark wizards in training, drilling them in the unforgiving reality of combat. This was the kind of preparation one could argue they needed, with Voldemort's war looming. Indeed, who better to teach defense in those dark times than someone who had literally been a double agent against Voldemort? Of course, Harry did not know Snape's true loyalties then. We as readers learned later that Snape was one of the bravest and most noble men Harry ever knew, secretly protecting Harry, even as he appeared to loathe him. By the end of that year, circumstances intervened. Snape made an unbreakable vow that led to him killing Dumbledore atop the astronomy tower, a traumatic event that left Harry scarred and convinced of Snape's villainy. Harry would only learn the truth much later, that this act was a tragic duty and not betrayal. But that night, Fleeing Hogwarts as a murderer, Snape cast a dark shadow over his tenure as DADA professor. It's complicated to rank Severus Snape. Academically, he was arguably the most effective teacher Harry had, but personally, he was Harry's least favorite by far. In our criteria, we balance what Harry learned with how much the teacher hindered him. Snape imparted knowledge, but poisoned its reception. He made Harry hate what was usually his favorite class. Therefore, Snape lands here in the middle, far from the worst, but held back from the top spot by his own bitterness and the toxic classroom atmosphere he created. He armed Harry with certain tools, yes, but he also inflamed Harry's emotions and clouded the trust that might have made those lessons truly sink in. Our runner-up, in second place, is a teacher who proved to be both outstanding and outrageously deceitful, Mad-Eye Moody, or rather, Barty Crouch Jr. in disguise. In Harry's fourth year, Goblet of Fire, Alistair Mad-Eye Moody, the famous ex-Auror, was slated to teach defense against the dark arts. The real Moody was a legendary dark wizard catcher with a wooden leg, a magical whirling eye, and a gravelly voice barking, "Constant vigilance!" That year, students did witness Moody's eccentric, tough-as-nails teaching style. But unbeknownst to all, it was not Moody at all, but a Death Eater imposter using Polyjuice Potion to assume Moody's identity. This imposter was Barty Crouch Jr., loyal servant of Voldemort playing a long con to manipulate Harry. It speaks volumes that even as a villain in disguise, Crouch Jr. delivered one of the best defense classes Harry ever had. Moody immediately set himself apart by treating the students as if they were new Auror recruits about to face the real dark forces outside school. In his very first lesson, he pulled perhaps the boldest move in Hogwarts teaching history. He demonstrated all three unforgivable curses in front of the class. He wanted them to know exactly what these curses looked like, the very spells from the dark arts they needed to understand to defend against. Other teachers would never dare. Using an unforgivable on a creature or student is forbidden. But Mad-Eye had no qualms. He dramatically showcased the Imperious Curse, forcing a spider to do acrobatics and dance. The students laughed until he reminded them this is what could be done to a person, to make them puppets. He showed the Cruciatus Curse, causing another spider to writhe in absolute agony, a sight so disturbing that Neville Longbottom was left shaking. We later learn why. His own parents had been tortured into insanity by that curse. Moody noticed Neville's distress, and, in a surprisingly kindly gesture, gave Neville some comforting words, and extra attention after class. Even a book on herbology as a pick-me-up. Finally, Moody demonstrated the killing curse of Avada Kedavra, mercilessly blasting a spider to death in front of their eyes. No counter-curse, no blocking it. Only one person known to have survived it. And he's sitting right in front of me. He practically pointed to Harry as he said this, driving the point home. The class was stunned, traumatized, yes, but also riveted. For the first time, they truly understood the stakes of the dark arts. Moody's methods were extreme, but undeniably effective. He also put them through intensive practical drills. Notably, he took each student and placed them under the Imperious Curse in a controlled environment, one by one, to teach them how it felt, and how to resist it. Under his watch, Harry learned to throw off the Imperious Curse entirely, a feat even some adult wizards can't manage. That lesson paid dividends immediately. Later that same school year, when Voldemort himself tried to Imperious Harry during their duel in the Little Hangleton graveyard, Harry was able to resist, surprising the Dark Lord. Chalk that up to Mad-Eye's class. Beyond that, Moody taught them constant alertness and a sort of fearless attitude toward dark threats. He regaled them with grizzled anecdotes of Auror life, keeping even the naughtiest students spellbound. Draco Malfoy couldn't sneer. He was too busy listening wide-eyed like everyone else. The man, or the disguise of a man, had presence, scarred face, clunking step, a magical eye swiveling to spot trouble even behind his head. Students felt both uneasy and safe in a weird way. Here was someone who clearly knew how dark wizards thought. Moody turned out to be an engrossing speaker and a surprisingly good instructor. He encouraged them to be on their toes. His catchphrase, "constant vigilance," echoed in their heads long after. Indeed, it was too good a catchphrase to be an act. It truly reflected Moody's own mantra, and presumably, Crouch Jr. adopted it to play the part convincingly. Of course, the grand irony is that all this excellent teaching was done by someone with nefarious ulterior motives. Barty Crouch Jr.'s goal was not to educate for education's sake. It was to guide Harry through the Triwizard Tournament and ensure he would be delivered at the right moment, weak and unsuspecting, to Lord Voldemort. Every helpful act Moody did for Harry was part of that scheme. He covertly tipped Harry off on how to beat the Hungarian horntail dragon, suggesting Harry use his flying skill to retrieve the golden egg. He slipped Neville information about Gillyweed, knowing it would reach Harry for the second task, and he quietly eliminated obstacles, even killing his own father and placing other champions under Imperius, to orchestrate Harry's victory. It's chilling that someone who ultimately meant Harry immense harm also became one of his most effective educators in defense. When the charade fell apart, when Harry returned from the graveyard traumatized, Cedric Diggory dead, and Moody whisked him away only to start raving and reveal himself, Harry felt utterly betrayed. This man he had respected and trusted was a polyjuiced traitor all along. Dumbledore and Snape only just subdued Crouch Jr. in time to save Harry from whatever endgame the madman had in mind. Looking back, Harry could at least appreciate the grim humor. The Death Eater taught defense against the dark arts well. Crouch Jr., for his part, had been so committed to the role of Mad-Eye that he gave the students a pretty authentic experience of what the real Alistair Moody would have taught. If anything, I suspect the real Moody, once rescued, might have grudgingly approved of the curriculum minus the kidnapping plot. Harry certainly learned a lot in Year 4, knowledge and skills that stuck with him through the rest of the war. For that reason, we rank the imposter Moody number 2 on this list. He loses the top spot only because, well, trying to deliver your student to Voldemort in the end rather undercuts one's legacy as a great teacher, doesn't it? Regardless, in terms of raw educational value, Moody gave Harry and his classmates some of the most advanced hands-on defense against the dark arts training they ever received at Hogwarts. It was unforgettable, equal parts enlightening and horrifying, and it set the stage for Harry to survive the very worst curses Voldemort would throw at him. Finally, we arrive at the top of the list. The number 1 defense against the dark arts teacher Harry ever had, Professor Remus Lupin. In Harry's 3rd year, prisoner of Azkaban, Remus J. Lupin came to Hogwarts and gave the school something it had desperately lacked: a truly competent, caring defense against the dark arts professor. For Harry and his friends, Professor Lupin's class was a revelation. Here was a teacher who not only knew his subject thoroughly, but also had a gift for teaching it in an engaging, practical way. Lupin was mild-mannered, shabbily dressed, and a bit tired-looking. Hardly as flashy as Lockhart or as intimidating as Moody. But he earned the students' respect almost instantly. He had a quiet authority and a warm, fatherly presence that made his classroom feel safe, even when they were confronting terrifying creatures. After 2 years of disappointment, Quirrell, and Lockhart, the students finally had a DADA teacher who made learning fun and effective. Lupin's curriculum was hands-on from day one. He believed the best way to learn defense was to face the dark arts directly, in manageable forms, and conquer your fears. He brought an air of creativity and gentle adventure to his lessons. In his very first class, Lupin famously taught the 3rd years how to handle a boggart, a shape-shifting creature that turns into whatever you fear most. Rather than a dry lecture, he had the students line up for a practical demonstration in the staff room. One by one, they confronted the boggart popping out of a wardrobe. Neville faced his fear of Professor Snape, and, with Lupin's encouragement, defanged it by imagining Snape in his grandmother's clothes, a comedic twist that had the class roaring with laughter. Ron banished his arachnophobia by picturing a spider with roller skates on its legs. Parvati Patil dispelled a snake by turning it into a harmless jack-in-the-box. Each victory, punctuated by the spell ridiculous and laughter, boosted the students' confidence. Harry watched, impressed. Though, when his turn came, Lupin subtly intervened to spare Harry from having Voldemort or a Dementor appear in front of everyone. This shows Lupin's tact. He was sensitive to each student's needs. That class ended with laughter echoing. Hardly anyone even noticed the boggart had been vanquished amid the joy. Lupin managed to teach them that fear can be overcome. For Neville Longbottom, that lesson was life-changing. For Harry, it was the beginning of a deep admiration. Lupin continued to introduce them to a variety of dark creatures throughout the year: Grindylows, Redcaps, Hinkypunks, giving them practical experience in recognizing and defeating these beings. His lessons were so engaging that students actually looked forward to defense class, a stark change from the past. When exam time came, Lupin didn't give them a written test. He set up an ingenious obstacle course filled with creature encounters. The students had to wade past a Grindylow, tackle a Redcap, sidestep a Hinkypunk's tricks, and finally face a boggart one-on-one, using everything they'd learned. It was like a fun adventure, yet it reinforced all their skills. They emerged from Lupin's class truly prepared to defend themselves, brimming with newfound confidence. Importantly, Lupin took a special interest in Harry's progress. He quickly became a mentor figure for the young Gryffindor. Early in the year, when Dementors, the soul-sucking guards of Azkaban, were haunting the grounds and had caused Harry to faint in terror during a Quidditch match, Lupin stepped up to help. He, of all people, understood Harry's reaction. Dementors had a particularly nasty effect on Harry because of the trauma he carried. Rather than letting Harry struggle alone, Lupin offered personal tutoring sessions after Christmas to teach Harry one of the most powerful defensive spells in existence, the Patronus Charm. In empty classrooms by moonlight, Lupin became a coach and encourager. He had Harry practice resisting a boggart that assumed the form of a Dementor, over and over, teaching him to conjure happy memories and say, "Expecto Patronum." At first, Harry could only produce feeble wisps, but Lupin patiently kept at it, chocolate on hand to revive Harry after each draining attempt. Under Lupin's guidance, Harry eventually managed to summon a full-fledged Patronus, a shining silver stag that galloped forth to scatter foe Dementors. This achievement at 13 years old was extraordinary, a testament to both Harry's talent and Lupin's excellent coaching. And it paid off. Later that year, Harry used the Patronus Charm to save Sirius Black and himself from a swarm of real Dementors, a pivotal moment in the story. Lupin literally gave Harry the means to fend off despair and darkness. That's not just teaching a cool spell, that's imparting hope and self-mastery. Beyond the curriculum, Remus Lupin touched Harry's life on a personal level. He was the first adult since Dumbledore who treated Harry not just as a student, but almost like family. In fact, Harry discovered that Lupin had been a great friend of his father, James Potter, back when they were students together. Lupin shared stories about James, mischievous youthful tales that Harry drank in, hungry for any connection to his parents. Sitting in Lupin's office, sipping tea and talking freely, Harry felt an emotional bond. Lupin was kind, empathetic, and unfailingly fair. He never played favorites or bullies. He even made an effort to protect Neville's feelings, something few other teachers did, given Snape's cruel treatment of Neville. To the Gryffindors, Lupin was a role model, strength gentle, knowledge humble. When he fought off that Dementor on the Hogwarts Express before the term, giving Harry chocolate and concern, he earned Harry's trust before he even stepped into the classroom. Of course, Lupin had his own secret, one that tragically cut short his time teaching. He was a werewolf, afflicted by lycanthropy since childhood. With Dumbledore's acceptance and the aid of the Wolfsbane potion, brewed by Snape, interestingly, Lupin managed his condition quietly during the year, missing classes on full moon days due to illness. He almost got through unscathed, but fate had other plans. On the night of the full moon, as Harry, Ron, and Hermione confronted Sirius Black, Lupin forgot to take his potion in the chaos of revelations. Learning Peter Pettigrew was the traitor, he transformed into a fearsome werewolf on the grounds. Though he didn't hurt anyone, thanks to Sirius intervening in animagus form, it was a frightening close call. The secret was out. Severus Snape, vindictive and resentful, exposed Lupin's lycanthropy to the school public. By morning, parents were screaming for Lupin's resignation. Heartbroken but understanding, Lupin resigned before he could be sacked, not wanting to endanger the students or cause Dumbledore trouble. Harry was devastated. He pleaded with Lupin to stay, but Lupin knew society's stigma was too strong. In their final parting, Harry lamented, "But you're the best defense against the dark arts teacher we've ever had," a sentiment echoed by probably every student in that class. Lupin smiled, appreciative but firm in his decision. He left Hogwarts, suitcase in hand, leaving behind a class of young witches and wizards who would never forget the professor who truly taught them to defend themselves. In 1 year, Remus Lupin transformed the way Harry viewed the dark arts class. He proved that a great teacher not only imparts knowledge, but also confidence, compassion, and inspiration. Harry learned more from Lupin than from any other defense teacher. Practical skills to ward off dark creatures, advanced magic like the Patronus, and even insights into his own legacy and inner strength. More than that, Lupin gave Harry something intangible, a connection to his past, and an example of the kind of man Harry might someday strive to be: courageous, kind, and self-sacrificing. It's fitting that years later Harry would name one of his sons after Remus, among others, honoring the gentle werewolf who fought the darkness within and without, and still took time to light the way for a boy in need. In summary, when we rank Harry's defense against the dark arts professors from worst to best, we do more than stack up teaching ability. We retell a crucial part of Harry's story. From Umbridge's tyranny, we see Harry's rebellious spirit forged in fire. From Lockhart's farce, Harry learns skepticism and self-reliance. Quirrell's treachery brings Harry face to face with evil in his very first year, a sign of battles to come. Snape's grueling tutelage tempers Harry's mind and will, even as personal hatred clouds their relationship. The false Moody, paradoxically, arms Harry with real survival skills under the guise of mentorship, only to betray him. Those experiences taught that trust must be earned, not given lightly. At the pinnacle, Lupin's brief but brilliant tenure shows Harry the true meaning of a teacher, one who empowers and cares in equal measure. Throughout these experiences, Harry Potter's education in defense against the dark arts went far beyond a normal curriculum. It was chaotic and often perilous, but ultimately everything he learned, and even everything he failed to learn, prepared him for his destiny. When the time came to face Voldemort and his Death Eaters, Harry had knowledge of curses and counter-curses, the mental fortitude to resist dark temptations, and the leadership to rally others, all of which trace back to these teachers' influences, for better or worse. In a way, the constant change in DADA professors forced Harry to become adaptable and proactive. He became by necessity a teacher to his peers and to himself. So, there you have it. Every defense against the dark arts teacher Harry ever had, ranked from worst to best. At the bottom sits Dolores Umbridge, who tried to snuff out the light, and at the top stands Remus Lupin, who helped that light burn brighter. And in the end, despite the obstacles and horrors thrown at him in that classroom, Harry Potter emerged as the ultimate defender against the dark arts.